afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first of the Insights and Intelligence Real Leadership Roundtable session series from Dell Technologies. A very apt and very interesting theme, what we have, and alongside the theme and the roundtable, we also have a very eclectic, marquee set of, I would say, AI analytics leaders. And if I just cumulate their experience, it will boil down to almost 120 plus years, and that to a pertinent one in AI analytics, data science. So over the next 75 minutes, what I would like to do is to kind of touch upon this theme in a very different manner and elicit views from each one of the panelists today. Reimagine human and enterprise decision making in the AI era. Now, we've all gone through this last 2 years journey of what I call the VUCA world, the pandemic laden kind of a scenario. Everything starting March 2020 until now have turned upside down. What we were anticipating in terms of very, very kind of a muted growth has turned out to be the most catapult kind of a I would say, growth in terms of a kind of a, let's say, not only a resurrection, a resurgence, but absolutely fantastic, splendid from many of the industry point of view, to the extent we are facing almost a deficit of product and services. Secondly, we've seen an acceleration in the digital exponential technologies with a massive leap. Third, we've also seen enterprises who were actually reluctant, who were actually the fag end of, I would say, the transformation exercise. They have really revamped their strategic orientations and now accelerating their digital AI journey. Now, there is a very, very different conversation which is happening today, and this is mostly amongst the enterprises. Now, there is a theory and a thesis around this, and which goes by this particular paraphrasing that we are data rich, information poor, insight starved. We are data rich, information poor, insight starved. Can you help us take the decision? And this is more like a rant coming from the corporates every now and then. Now, just as a theoretical aspect, on an average, a human being takes about 60 odd decisions on a personal or a enterprise side, 60 odd decisions. And these could be the strategic, tactical, operational. What is my plan after this roundtable? What's my plan for the evening? What exactly I need to do in terms of an office function, what I'm responsible for. Now, some of these decisions, what we are taking on day-to-day basis, or majority of them, are actually influenced by our gut, intuition, or influenced by our friends, colleagues, and spouses. Now, think of a scenario as we see AI, artificial intelligence, getting embedded into our ecosystem of on a personal side and also on the enterprise side. On the personal side, the kind of browsing, the kind of, let's say, transaction, the kind of, let's say, anything what we are touching digitally or virtually is leaving a trail. And that trail is being analyzed to generate insights, intelligence, and recommendation by the companies. I don't need to give an example. There are dime a dozen companies which are doing that. The second aspect over there in the corporate boardrooms, the corporate enterprises, organizations, there is a new emergence of decision making which is not by gut or intuition or historical. It's a fact-based kind of a decision making where eventually an algorithm is either sitting in the boardroom, taking decisions on behalf of the board, or actually kind of enabling decisions for the corporate enterprises or CXOs. Now, this exactly is our theme of today, which is reimagining human and enterprise decision making in the AI era. Now, what exactly we are trying to bring to the table as part of the key takeaways? One, how much transformation we are able to see or witness as a part of organizations. We have leaders from different industries, so they'll be able to give a flavor in terms of what's the kind of transformation which is happening. Then sticking to the theme per se, we would like to delve in terms of some of the metamorphosis which is happening on the human side of decision making with AI. And the leaders will touch upon the facets around how those decision making processes are getting actually influenced by AI. Now, jumping on then about the corporate and the enterprise side, how AI is getting not only, I would say, pervasive, but really embedded in each and every part of the business function, value chains, and eventually influencing the decision making. So we'll break this series of, I would say, thoughts around these segments and try to kind of elicit various views from the participants. Now, just to ensure that I think the introduction part is taken well care of, the best way to kind of do that is to hand over to the leaders to have a brief introduction by themselves. By the way, if I've forgotten that, my name is Sameer Dhanrajani. I'm the president at 3AI, also the CEO at AI Curate Advisory and Consulting. And to start with the introduction, I will have Nitin. Nitin, please go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Sameer. Thank you, 3AI, for inviting. Thank you, Dell, for this opportunity. Before I introduce myself, Sameer, you said you forgot to introduce yourself. Well, I think what goes along with you is Sameer Naam to Suna Yoga. You definitely don't need any introduction. But people like us, we do need some introduction. I'm part of the Wells Fargo group here. I lead their consumer analytics and marketing group. That's for the last 1.5, almost 2 years. Before that, I have about 2 decades of experience, worked across financial services, retail, and other domains, including when I was at ABG, it was retail and manufacturing and transportation, a lot of different things. Over the past 2 decades, what I have essentially done is leverage data, leverage the power of analytics, and help businesses make better decisions, make sharper decisions. And I think the topic that we have today is very, very interesting and insightful. I'm hoping that I'll be able to share some of my experiences, some of my examples, some of the perspectives that I have built, and also hear and learn from the leaders.
Wonderful. Thanks, Nitin. And one of the things which I would like to highlight about Nitin, and this is something which I may be able to supplement given many, or rather all the leaders who are part of this roundtable. In fact, I know them from years. I think one of the most prolific data scientist and I would say analytics AI leader is what Nitin is all about, always unassuming, understated in terms of what he would like to call out. And the best part about Nitin is I think the range and the diversity of the projects, engagements he's handled throughout his stint, whether it's the current one with Wells Fargo, the earlier one. So he's got a very diverse and a very, I would say, holistic experience of actually being very hands-on in terms of gauging the impact through AI. Shashwat, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sameer. Good to have this stellar lineup of speakers today and talking with them. I have been doing analytics predominantly over last couple of decades, and I actually know most of the people that we have on this panel. One way or the other, the world is very small as usual. In my current role, I lead analytics and data sciences for Philips GBS globally, and primary challenges that I'm really working on currently is around enterprise adoption of data sciences and AI. So very close to what the topic is. And previous to that, I have been mostly in the banking industry, really on the scoring side, risk management side. And I do think that the future is now. So let's, that's all from my end. Sameer, over to you.
So just to add on Shashwat again, I think one of the common peculiar thing we would observe in this group, very unassuming, very absolutely understated in terms of their accomplishments, but playing always behind the scene is something what I've always what I call unraveled about them. The range of work what Philip does, which is of course through Shashwat and his team, is amazing. I mean, a very true, I would say, analytics representation of how business functions can actually leverage analytics AI for the maximum optimal impact and benefit is what actually Philips has been able to leverage through Shashwat and his team. A wonderful job done over there. Moving on to Shivani, could you please introduce yourself?
Thanks, Sameer. Very happy to be part of such a big, strong panel in the industry. And just to talk about myself, I have been in this industry when it used to be called probably statistics 2 decades ago, and been seen the journey of statistics converting to analytics, analytics converting to data science, and now we all know the famous word AI. And I have been to a financial industry for longest time, and now I'm in Reliance Jio, where I'm leading the strategic initiatives in telecom, sports, and agro verticals. I think in last many years, I have focused a lot on the AI-driven automation piece of it, especially in financial industry and retail, where how can you make the processes better, faster for a consumer as well as from the enterprise perspective. So that's it from my side, and looking forward for a great conversation with all the industry leads.
One key point about Shivani. Thanks for the introduction, Shivani. One of the most, I would say, eminent data scientists in terms of the work she's now done in terms of Reliance Jio. I mean, a very cutting edge work on computer vision image classification is underway. We still under wraps and absolutely not to be kind of disclosed. And that's something what I think Shivani is trying to kind of do with her team at Reliance Jio. Welcome, Shivani. Sarah, over to you for a brief introduction.
Thanks, Amir, and hello, everyone. Um, Glad to be part of this panel where there's so much to learn from each other. I think the best thing is, even though we meet each other, talk to each other, when we have this such formal discussion, there's so much takeaway that we have. I work for Citi, and I handle all of the consumer analytics. When I say that, all of corporate banking analytics and retail services analytics. Been with the industry for several years now, 20 plus years. Have done several roles in the past, ranging, of course, from technology to analytics. The thing I really like about what I'm doing is, never-ending learning from where we started in analytics to where we are reaching, and the spread of things that we can do within the analytics world, and how much we can change how we are seeing customers specifically, and how we can get to personalization to hyper personalization. And there's so much learning that comes with each industry. More to speak about it. Glad to learn from others as well.
Thanks, Sarah. And one of the thing I want to add about Sarah is I always tout myself knowing many leaders in the ecosystem. She is also in the same league, very highly networked and absolutely at the cusp of what I say, uh, understanding or rather kind of really doing some strategic operational work on the side of what I call IT and ops and analytics put together. Welcome, Sarah. And Sundar, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sabir. Very glad to be part of this very august forum. It always is a pleasure to be part of the events, and very happy to be here. Sundar Ramalingam, based in Bangalore, and I work for NVIDIA. And what I do is I run a program which is called as AI Consulting Partners Program. It's a global program where I work with AI service providers and help them to make their solutions even better so that their products and offerings are migrated towards the newer ways of data analytics and AI. That's what I do. And before assuming this role, I ran the deep learning practice for NVIDIA India. That was for about 4 years. And the past 1 year or so, I'm doing this role as the global director for AI Consulting Partners.
Awesome. And one of the thing about Sundar, I think much before we had heard words about GPUs, quantum kind of computing and processing, uh, his he and his team at NVIDIA had already cracked what are the applications and the use cases around that. So thank you so much, Sundar, for introductions. Let me jump straight away to the theme. And what I would like to do is to take a very quick kind of, let's say 60 minutes, I would say 60 seconds kind of let's say, snapshot, which is essential just to warm up our audience. And we have audience actually from different segments of the industries and business functions. It's a very, I would say, holistic but very diverse group of working professionals, leaders, CXOs from, I would say, organizations, GCC, startups, PVC firms. Now, one of the thing I'm sure each one of us have witnessed today is this metamorphosis of enterprises in terms of the digital, or I would say the huge exponential technologies transformation. Uh, Not just about your industry, but feel free to talk about it industry. What do you all believe in terms of this, or how do you all witness this whole transformation of the businesses happening across industries, and what it means in terms of a change or an acceleration as part of AI coming in? I just want 60 seconds, 75 seconds at best from each one of you, please. Nitin, can you start, please?
Okay, since you said the highlight 60-second, 75-second thing, what I feel is there is a whole lot of desire. There's a whole lot of sometimes fear of being left out, FOMO, which is driving all the enterprises, many enterprises. Some enterprises, of course, are really at the cutting edge and are driving, how they want to leverage AI for their decision making. But everybody, whatever be the reason, whatever be the motive, is jumping ahead. And I think it is really important for all of us, for people who are in the job, in the field, to enable it and to embed it into decision making, to do it right and to do it in a more structured and meaningful way, so that it actually makes sense and there is more belief in it rather than more skepticism, which sometimes many of the leaders are. And I probably will, hopefully, given the time and when we talk about how I have seen some of these things play out and the pitfalls of that.
Great. Shashwat, over to you. The transformation of the businesses in your lens from last 2 years.
Yeah, I think what has happened is with the scare around platform companies taking over the world, whether it's Google, Amazon, whatever name you take, every industry is thinking that we are at the cusp of getting intervened, and unless we change, platform will all take it over. So with that in mind, I think everybody is trying to change. Everybody is getting onto the bandwagon with the idea that at the end of the day, AI should drive simplification, should drive, and one of the things that I think in the AI space, what needs to happen is really the explainability portion. But anyway, we will get into it later, I'm sure. But I think it's explosion happening with just 10 seconds. So with explosion and availability of all the assets, we all are going to move to platform organizations who will prosper and do AI. I think that's where I feel we will go.
AI for simplification. Wonderful. Sarah, over to you.
So, Samir, if we look at how last 2 years has enabled digitization due to COVID or pandemic, it's just been exponential, right? While everybody was in the journey of AI, this has fast-tracked everything. There was a time when technology was seen as an enabler, but now pretty much technology is driving business. And that means technology is not just enabling, but helping make decision in each of the business. Today, we are also looking at how AI can help in rolling out the new features, right, based on the customers. So in Crux, either everybody it's not a bandwagon. If people don't move on to this, there is no survival. So it's become a necessity rather than just fad. And that is how all enterprises are adapting to what is required to survive.
Necessity, not a fact. Great. Sundar?
I see two groups of companies so far as adoption of AI is concerned. The first one is people who started about 5 to 6 years ago, who understood AI, who had a good team of advanced data analytic leaders, and who were able to connect business to the technology need. And they are cruising very, very well. And very clear roadmap has been laid. Good work has happened, and they continue to march forward on the journey towards adopting AI and ensuring that AI permeates all through the organization. The second group of people or the companies who have been not so sure about AI. They did not have the the necessary skill set, not the understanding of how it works and things like that. And suddenly the CEOs and the CTOs, these two people, the CEOs and the CTOs, they have come under tremendous pressure and insecurity that, hey, am I being left behind? My peers are claiming big things. I'm not doing anything like that. So they are trying to jump onto the bandwagon. And this, I would say, is another big group of companies. Now, they are facing a lot of issues because the biggest problem that they are facing is they are not able to connect a business justification to a technology investment. Once again, they are not able to connect a business justification to the technology investment. So they are grappling quite a bit in this area. Typically, the traditional companies who have not been exposed to advanced data analytics, I'm not even using the term AI, advanced data analytics so far, they are all trying to jump into the bandwagon, and there is a lot of chaos happening there. And I think that it will take maybe a couple of more years for them to really understand what this all means and ensure that they take a rain check and ensure that they start the right journey. So this is a group of companies which certainly needs a lot of hand holding from the industry. That's how I look at
Awesome.
it.
Awesome. So this whole conundrum about the ROI and the investments from exponential technologies is what you touched upon. I'll come to this. Shivani, over to you.
Thanks, Samir. I think very nice ideas what we heard from leaders. I think before we talk about AI, let's talk about the data. I think we used to call that data is oil. I would say not anymore because it is available to each and every organization, each and every enterprise. It is just the usability of that is changing from each and every organization. And AI is not that we need to introduce, or adoption of AI is very difficult in this era. It's the scalability which is making the difference from one organization to another organization. It is not the era where you make probably 10, 15 models and put that in production and you will feel that I'm doing a great job. This is the era where we need to talk about probably hundreds and thousands of models, which is making helping the organizations to make the decisions, and that is the change which probably COVID is bringing in, where people are, for example, Standard Chartered, they have started video KYC. So that's the step which organizations are taking to make their journey faster, make customer journey much more simpler and much more meaningful to them. So that's the, I think, change which required in AI era, and probably some way COVID has pushed us to a very right, you can say, area.
Awesome. So the COVID has accelerated the change which was impending and absolutely waiting to happen. So that's great. Now you can actually realize, and this is for the participants, when the leaders come together, each with a diverse but very multifarious kind of a background, how we can just sit back and relax, including me, and just hear the very diverse words of wisdom which is going through. Because I'm sure the ones who are taking notes, I mean, the whole set of notebook, I can tell you, will be enriched with these nuggets of a perspective which you will have at the end of 75, 90 minutes. But we also have one leader who joined now, Praveen. There was a slight glitch. Sorry about Praveen about this, but it will be great if you can introduce yourself, and we'll take on the next question directly from you in terms of the response.
Absolutely, Samir. And this kind of shows one can be never fully prepared. Murphy's Law always tries it. But thanks for having me on the platform, with such an eminent, panel. I'm Praveen Kumar. I'm actually a field marketing leader for Client Solutions Group at Dell Technologies India. My current role and job entitles me to consult customers on their workforce transformation. So it's all about how you adopt endpoint technologies to better your employees' productivity to the next level, with probably the right selection of devices or solutions, or how you integrate it completely, right? So it's about consulting on workforce transformations. And I've been associated with Dell Technologies for almost about 14 years, till date. Thanks for having me here again, Samir. Back to you.
Wonderful. So I think let's jump to the second segment now, with the stage being set in terms of very imminent but very plausible transformation we have seen across businesses. My second segment will be more about what I call this human decision making, which is getting, I would say, radicalized, if I use that a bit mouthful word with AI. But more importantly, I think this is all about our behaviors. This is all about how we kind of consume the information. Now, this is where I want to set up and ask Nitin first. Nitin, this whole aspect of the human decision making with AI, given the fact we have seen, and I'm using data analytics and the same continuum for a minute, let's assume that kind of a thing. From your lens, how do you see this whole human decision making or a personal side of decision making getting influenced with AI and analytics?
Sure. Thank you, Samir. Thanks for the question. And I thought a little bit about it, as you were also opening and you were talking about some of those decisions that every human being goes through, and some decisions we take through gut, some decisions we actually, when we are born, we are sort of pre-built with that decision-making engine in our mind. Some we develop. And there is this famous book, which I'm sure many of us would have read or are in the process of reading like me, Thinking Fast and Slow. And I think I haven't yet completely consumed the whole thing, but I do feel that, AI is also pretty much like our human brains, where we have some decisions which take a longer time, need attention, need focus, and hence are slow decisions. But I think over a period of time, we build a sense of comfort, we build a sense of making sense of those decisions, and then they start to then become into our fast decision-making brain. I think most of the organizations are also going through a very similar journey. Whether we talk about one model or 100 models or thousands of models, every model typically goes through the same journey. And I thought I'll talk about some specific examples, but I instead thought, if I just take a step back, looking at some of the domains that I've worked across, some of the different type of problems that I've solved, what is that common thread? And while the world is accelerating, while many things are changing, and there are lots of different forces at play, some of the core principles, the core frameworks, from my perspective, still remain to the same. And having learned it from my MBA friends, I always think it's good to come up with some framework. So I have a framework which I call it the DISCO framework.
Say that again. Say that again.
DISCO framework.
DISCO framework.
Not the one that our superstar Mithunda told us about, but this is something which sort of ties some of these things together. One, of course, no prizes for guessing, is the data. We have to make sure that every model, every set of models that we're talking about has to have some very good, stored, curated, whether it's curated or not, at least have a wide and deep availability of data. I think one person here spoke about that data part. Without that, nothing. None of it actually would go forward. Assume we have the data. Assume we have a power hitting AI team which builds the best of the models. I think that journey is just about starting from there. Building the model is probably one of the easier ones. Building these AI frameworks is probably the easier of the task because it's a little bit more scientific and a little bit more systemic. I think the other portion, which is the ISCO part of the DISCO framework, is where the real fun starts to happen. Is if we have to make sure that our executives, our enterprise at large, is comfortable with letting those slow decisions becoming into gut-based, or letting that get into their system, if you will, of decision making through AI and through algorithms, is where then you have to go and share those insights. What are those things that you're seeing in the data that really are speaking to people, speaking to either the belief that they hold or are challenging their beliefs? So either you found something which is what I already know, and when you tell me something, I say, yeah, it makes sense, and I sort of build a little bit more comfort around that. Or no, it's totally different from my belief, but is an aha moment for me, which changes and helps me think about the data, think about the decisions that I'm making from a different perspective, and then I get a little bit more used to it. So that's the insight. And of course, there's a whole spectrum in between as well. And then comes the S part, which is, to my mind, simulations. When we want leaders to get comfortable, we should give them the ability to play around and give them the tools that they feel that they are able to understand the system and the decision making much better. That's what I spoke about, explainable AI. And if you give those simulations, you can ratchet up the dial, you can increase the assumption rate or whatever, because people have a sense that they know the business and they've been doing this business. And if they feel that, this is how, if I were to run the business, if this is how I were to make the decision, how would I make the decision? And if the AI starts to then give the same thing, it helps. It helps build that comfort. It helps build that confidence. And if you provide those simulations, like most of us, we will never change our default settings in our cell phones. Most of the business users also won't tinker around much with it. But I think if we give them those simulations, it helps them get more comfortable. And then C is control, which is once those decisions are embedded and are being used by decision making and by enterprises and by systems, there has to be a good visibility. If you think of it, create dashboards, create metrics, create KPIs, which help us understand where those decisions are going, where the business is moving, so that I have a sense of control. I know, I as a business leader, so that again, I don't feel that, hey, I don't know where things are going, and I don't have the trust and the belief in the system. And always tying it to the outcomes. What we spoke about. Whatever we do, if it is not really helping the business, and since we're talking here about enterprises and enterprises adopting algorithms for decision making, it has to have the meaning. It has to have an outcome. It has to have a point where they feel that, yes, what they are doing makes sense. There is an outcome. There is a measurable aspect of it. So that's my DISCO framework, which I feel many organizations are already doing, or in some shape and form are and have been doing it for some time. And I think that's something which I have felt as something which has helped us traverse through the journey wherever we have.
Awesome. Disco framework. I mean, you can't take out analytics and Bollywood at some level. It's somewhere, it's all meshed in. But thanks so much, Nitin. This is interesting and keep it coming kind of a thing. Praveen, let me shift it to you. Workforce optimization, workforce productivity, hybrid kind of a working environment. I mean, we all were looking for these kind of templates, playbook, do it yourself kind of, let's say, toolkits, but it happened in last 2 years without a kind of a, let's say, someone imposing. It came in as a kind of a compelling reason. From your lens, how do you see this whole workforce optimization, workforce productivity, and where is that role of AI analytics you see playing or being played over there?
That's a great question. In fact, last 18 months has changed the way everybody started looking at workforce transformation. A couple of years back, people were trying to still implement BYOD and, whatever first generations, they were trying to get, accustomed to how to treat millennials within their, employee workforce and stuff like that. 18 months, this pandemic threw everything out of gear, and it's now become so mandatory to kind of have this enforced transformation. The first couple of things that happened, if I may. One is the devices or access points which an end user is having today, with which he does whatever he needs to do, has changed in the paradigm shift. The device itself has become intelligent. Let's be very clear, right? And the device needs to now adapt to the conditions how the user wants it to work like. We believe in a strong policy that one size does not fit all. So you can't just buy 1,000 devices and ship it out to all of your end user groups and say, take it and use it. You will never know what's the productivity loss because that person probably did not need that specific device. So one side, the intelligent PCs or devices are evolving using AI. We have now devices, proliferation with AI, right from, I would say you would not believe, but from a headphones to a web camera to a monitor to a simple laptop or a PC. Everything is enabled now with AI capabilities and machine learning capabilities. It understands how a user wants to treat it, and it kind of gives the best performance using machine learning. It understands how the PC needs to work and deliver the performance. That way, if you look at it, the end user experience is now very, very important. Because at the end of the day, it's all about your employees' experience. If they are happy delivering the productivity you expect them to do, absolutely fine. Because a lot of companies in India are treated on billable. Couple of hours of a day of downtime you have on your devices is going to impact your project pretty much clearly. And rightfully asked, when you ask me what happened in the last 2 years, what if you have a failure of a device? You can't take it back to your office. Your office is locked down. You can't access your IT. Everything needs to be delivered at your doorstep. So eventually what's happened now is a deployment process to service installations to maintenance of your entire IT infrastructure has now to be done wherever you are. It doesn't matter you need to come to office or wherever you want. Because when you're trying to enable them in terms of work from anywhere, you need to ensure that it is end-to-end, not just providing the mobility device. If there are systems to keep your employee productivity up and running, devices as well as services, in fact, which can include self-healing, proactive and predictive maintenance capabilities, it will be great. Just a small little example, I don't want to deep dive into the hardware level things, but what if your hard drive is about to fail and the system actually realizes that your hard drive is about to fail? On the back end, it triggers a communication to your IT team and to the tech support team, and the replacement hard drive reaches to your doorstep without you actually not knowing that something is happening, something is going to go wrong, right? So that level of intelligence, the data which is collected even in a simple PC is of paramount importance. And when it comes to IT decision makers or any CXOs, decision makers specifically, if you have a clean-cut dashboard with all the data, with the sensors, whatever is present, and given to you and to enable you to make the right decision, I think that's the next level, which kind of all the customers are actually looking forward to. And in fact, this is not in theory, but this is something which is being practiced right now. And workforce transformation cannot be better, better than this particular time. You're enforced right now. It's part of your core IT strategy.
No, very, very potent. And in fact, the same thing, and Praveen, taking a cue from there, I want to pose a question which I would like to have, I would say, inputs from Sarah and Shashwat, both of your handling teams today. Purely from a perspective, and somewhere all these glitches have no resolution, which is the echo which is happening. Can everyone go on mute, please? Intelligence apart, but glitches cannot be taken away. A question to Sarah and Shashwat, both of you are handling teams. And teams today, when individuals today, irrespective of their hierarchies, title, and badges, I've gone through a lot in this last 2 years and all. Now, from a aspect of a decision making in terms of the work, the whole aspect of managing home and kind of let's say the work, and the aspect about how the performances needs to be enhanced, how this whole aspect of their entire kind of let's say management of work needs to be happen, or the work systems or those workflow needs to be kind of let's say tuned up. Have you seen any kind of a best practices which have come in your teams or in your processes where AI analytics has been kind of let's say kind of a contributing kind of a force or a force multiplier over there?
Very interesting question. Shashwat, please add. I will start. Right. I think when it comes to employees itself, I think, like you said, lot of things change suddenly, right? We have come a long way from where we started. When it comes to pertinent element of day-to-day life, I think there's still a lot of human intervention that's happening. But on a bigger scale of things, when it comes to productivity or how we measure the performance to work-life balance, there is an element of intelligence that has come in. Just to take it as an example, right? Today, when we look at the work-life balance, we look at a lot of, I won't say it's AI purely, right? We look at the data of how much work has been done and how many hours people are putting in and how do we strike a balance. It's all data-driven decision now. It's not somebody's asking, so we will ask somebody and we will hire somebody and we will just dump the work. It's the decisions are nowhere done like that, right? So we look at what fetches the results on both ends, from the business perspective and also from the employee perspective. That's one element. And performance is not biased, because there is an element of decisioning that is coming through outcome. When I say that, it's not, I like a pet project, so that is done, right? It's what is it that we are driving as a value to the business? How are we making that as a commercialized product rather than a built a model, right? So a lot of things have changed stepwise, I would say. Is there scope to do better and look at it holistically? Yes.
Yeah. I'll probably add. Thank you, Samir, Sarah.
Can everyone go on mute? There is a bit of echo, please.
Oh,
go ahead, Shashwat, not you.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. I think I'll make it very specific. So earlier, what we used to do is we call it daily management, continuous improvement, having daily management boards, really looking at metrics, many metrics. with the advent of in last 2 years, whatever we saw, we all went digital, right? I mean, we came up with digital twin is what it is called. We became digital natives. Everything now on dashboards, I mean, which are all on phone, and number of metrics actually reduced, given that Sada was also talking about outcome based model, right? We only look at, say, timeliness, accuracy or quality, and what the customers or the stakeholders are saying. So it doesn't matter whether a person is working 2 hours or 10 hours anyway. And there is, I mean, we don't even track also, for sure. What we do is just look at those metrics so that we win as a team and win towards our stakeholders. So we've moved completely digital, and that has happened. I mean, we were anyway moving, but this was accelerated by what has happened in the last 2 years. And I can see the productivity is actually increased manifold from what we were having with the comparable number of employees. So what we've seen is actually, without doing tracking, without doing, just basing it on digital twin as well as outcome driven, we saw that it is really much better from a performance perspective.
See, look at how smart our leaders are actually, given that today there is a world of talent acquisition spree which is going on. Shashwat had made the value proposition very clear that look, we are not tracking any kind of as long as the work is being done. So this is a pitch which I really want to understand, Shashwat. How do you embed within your narration? But I think you've touched the right point. I think over there, you and Sarah, in fact, very nicely, I would say, cued in. Leaning on to a very different facet, and I want to tag now Sundar and Shivani. Both of you, while you represent two cutting edge organizations, Reliance and NVIDIA, we've seen, I mean, in fact, I'm sure you guys are both of you living on the edge of Moore's Law kind of a thing, with so much of sophistication and being, I would say, the spearhead of the industry. You would be looking at more kind of a technology advance, I would say, innovations. But one thing I want to pick up over there, and this is what something which Shashwat touched upon at the beginning. Now, there is often a misconception, and I'm talking about the usual generic, larger kind of a segment of working professionals or outside also, that AI is a black box. It's a set of codes, it's a set of patterns, and a lot of thrust of late has been put into this whole aspect of explainability, making it much more simple, lucid for everyone to understand what's beneath the hood. Now, from your lens, how do you see, in terms of the advancements and progression happening on the AI, in terms of making it much more for the masses? And the idea over there is to just declutter the whole thing and make it much more transparent what it should be, kind of a thing. So, Shivani, Sundar, your views, please, on this.
Wonderful question, Samir. Sundar, if you don't mind, I'll go with that. So just to, I think, talk about the technological advancement, what we are seeing now. I think organizations like Reliance or Jio, we would look forward for platformization approach, where we can build probably from one vertical and take it to other verticals in with some modification, some retraining part of it. So when we are probably building new solutions, new product, for example, for telecom, we would like to see if those are reusable in other technologies as well, without much of change, without much of you can say making it wider or broader, etc. So that the base things can be reutilized with multiple verticals, and you will retrain it as an when you are reusing it in other vertical. So that makes the life much more simpler in terms of how do you reutilize the aspect, how do you scale it, and how do you make the technology which supports that. So I think in one of the conferences we were talking about low code, no code environment. Can we build a technology where we can have the first cut of solution ready, majority from the technological concept itself, rather than a business analyst or a data science person get involved? We can have their expertise coming into the picture in the next run, where we require the business input, where we require probably sharpening or fine tuning of the models. So that's the progression one can think about from moving from as is process to you can say scalability aspect of it. I think certainly the explainability part is the key to overall AI. If that is not there, it is very difficult to take actions on actions from business. So I think that is getting better. Even we see now in computer vision models, we are able to get explainability up to probably 92% decently well. So I think that's the way where technologies are moving now. And if the models are not actionable, not explainable, it's just not useful. It is just I would say illusion, not useful.
Great. Sundar, your views?
So when it comes to explainability, I mean, we all understand it's very important. I mean, I'm not going to get into why it is important. We all know that. There are purely from a technology perspective, there are two challenges. The challenge number one is the technique itself. I mean, let's say if it's a deep learning model, and if, I mean, deep neural networks constitute a deep learning model, we know that. Do I have the technique today? Have the research and academia crossed the milestone where we have a technique where I'm able to go into the deep neural network and understand something that is happening in one of the middle layers? Answer is no. It is not there. There are ways of doing it. I mean, there are you could circumvent processes. You can come out with some imaginary ways of doing it. You could do assumptions, lot of guesstimates, etc., and try to guess what is there inside in between. But do we have an established, a proven technique which can extract intelligence from inside the deep neural network and explain that, hey, this decision is because of this? The technique is not there today, right? This is number one, very, very important. The second one, I would say the technological, the limitation to get this done is I mean, the research is happening now. I mean, let's not forget the fact that these techniques are only 6 to 7 years or maybe 8, 9 years old, and explainability is a niche objective that one needs to achieve inside this technique. So it's a subset of an entirely new revolution that has happened in the area of AI. So I wouldn't be too critical or too concerned about it. It is an evolution that has been happening. I bet 10 years ago, we would not have imagined where we are today. It would have been impossible to imagine where we would have, all 6 of us here. Likewise, I am very confident, looking at the way the trajectory of evolution is happening, I am very confident that this is also an evolution that is happening. We are, as Shivan rightly pointed out, there are some areas where there is good explainability creeping in. And the good news here is that there is so much of research happening in the academia, so much of research, particularly in the developed countries. So much of money is being pumped into it. Canada, US, etc. So much research is happening, and it is bound to happen. We only have to, I mean, we don't have to feel too defensive about it and worried about it. Let's take it as it comes, and the natural evolution will lead us there. When in some time from now, we'll have very good explainability of whatever is happening inside the so-called black box.
Wonderfully explained. So I think moving on, and this is where I would take again a rapid kind of a, let's say, response from each one of you, and I'm moving to the segment of enterprise decision making, which is the second of our, I would say, the facet what we want to touch upon. I want to start on the enterprise decision making with a business function cut or a rendition. Now, technology, HR, marketing, customers experience, sales, finance, each supply chain, operations, each one of these business functions per se are going through a big change where it's an established fact, which is coming from your commentary and narration also, that AI is pervasive. It's embedded. It's just now a kind of a different facet. How much time will it take to make it much more holistic within the organization or pervasive within the organization? But coming to this aspect of business functions, going through this AI infusion in totality, in your kind of a rapid response, kind of a, let's say, viewpoint, how do you think this decision making, whether it's an HR, marketing, sales, or supply chain, will change? And Feel free to give any anecdotes or examples just to supplement your views, please. So any one of you out of 6 can go, but the intent is to cover all 6 of you.
I can go first if that is okay.
Yeah, please.
So, as a future trend, metaverse, this is going to be a big thing. And you won't know the amount of research that is going into it. You don't know the amount of development that is getting into it. And put it very simply, anything that is built will be visualized. And when you visualize it, it will be visualized in a way that it truly obeys the laws of physics. And anything that moves will become autonomous. Anything that moves will become autonomous. And anything that is autonomous will have to be simulated with its full features. So anything that gets built will be visualized, and anything that moves will become autonomous, and anything that is autonomous will be simulated, and hence it will become even better and better. That is how I see the progression being made.
Let me go next, and I'll give my rapid fire answer to the question that you had, Samir. But before that, what Sundar was saying, I was seriously nodding my head, because sometimes we feel is we don't question humans when they make the same decisions, but when the machines try to make the same decisions, we try to put them in a
I
very,
only
very
thought,
different
Nitin, we don't question our bosses. So that's a new thing what I heard. Go ahead, please.
Of course we do. Yeah, that apart is we put a very different benchmark of explainability to the machines, which I think what Sundar was touching beautifully about. Even the technology doesn't exist right now. But coming back to your question of all these different functions and how do we enable that? To my mind, again from my experience of what I've seen, anecdotes, and one of my latest LinkedIn posts was almost a rant about it. Was I think it's probably us, and we have to look internally and we have to introspect. When I say us, I'm talking about the data scientists, people who are in the field, to make sure that we either don't exist in a way that it's made so esoteric that these functions don't understand what we're talking about, and they feel, hey, I don't get it, and hence I don't want to use it. The other extreme is what I've seen is where people feel that, oh, it's a triviality. All I need to do is think only about what it needs to be built as a system, as a software, and worry about all the ML, all the data science later on as an afterthought. I think that's another problem. So to my mind, the onus is on us to make sure that our functions, if you think about as our partners, as our ecosystem, really understand what we're talking about, and also get to the forefront of those discussions in the forethought rather than as an afterthought.
Awesome.
I'll just add to what Nitin said, right? Because if you look at how we have evolved as an organization or the enterprise setup, we took functions within each of these business, and we actually automated this, or we created models for this. But what we did not do is look at the whole customer journey and say what of these are tied together so that at the enterprise level, we are making it seamless. For example, we looked at customer acquisition and we said, okay, we'll have to cross-sell. What is the propensity of buying it? At the same time, we didn't necessarily tie it to what channels, what are the touch points, right? But that's where we are going now. Even though it's a little bit late, but I think we are heading towards that journey, or we have progressed a lot towards that journey. But that's where it'll all come together to make sense.
Yeah, that's a very good, I would say, leeway into what I would want to say. So thanks, Sarah, for that, start. So what I think what Sarah was trying to say was about point solutions that have happened over the time in various functions. And with the enterprise view that we have, we will be able to do the whole AI part of it, which basically means we are able to automate all the decision making, which will make our life simpler. And also there will be a prioritization matrix behind it, right? So the harder decisions will get automated first, because that is where you need more help, right? So you will start with that. And another thing, if an organization or enterprise wants to get into this, they have to have a long-term view. You cannot live with quarter-to-quarter view. You have to have maybe a couple of years view, so that you are looking at the process holistically, and then you are looking at what kind of solution you want to bring in what point, because every solution is different and every point is different. So that will be my view.
Yeah, just to add to that, right? It used to be, analytics function doing what business asked without business actually knowing what is the outcome they want holistically from an analytics solution. Today, that scenario is changing as well. We have CAOs sitting and saying, okay, what should be the analytics strategy for a particular business function? And then saying what makes sense to be, having as a solution, business solution. So it's a maturity on both technology front and how we looked at analytics as a solution to business evolution.
Mhm.
Wonderful thought. I think I'll just add to what Nitin or Sundar or Shashwat and Sarah said, that I think we are maturing as AI is moving from different eras. And if I see 5-6 years back, we were doing pretty good predictive modeling, but I think the way we have expanded the scope now, we have incorporated the simulation layer to that, where we can probably machine run can run probably thousands and thousands of permutation and combination for scenarios, and those scenarios can be optimized with just considering either you want as a solution, do you want a worst case solution or a best case solution, so that people will have you can say understanding about what all can go good, what all can go wrong, and they can plan it in this way. So when we talk about enterprises, I think that is the thing where which is going to move much more stronger, and because simulation does require tons and tons of model which are going to help us to get to the next level. So what Nitin was talking about, his disco framework, I think that fits perfectly well with the enterprise layout.
Awesome. So Nitin,
Now Nitin can
you
give a I think one
Don't ask me
this
to
is also
do the disco moves. All I know is this, but I can do that.
Great. So there is one interesting question, and this is absolutely what I wanted as a part of rapid response kind of a mechanism, because we got to move fast and kind of cover few, because now we have also got questions getting streamed. And I want to pick up a very interesting question which has come in. In fact, this is the right group to put a response, and maybe 2 of you or 3 of you can provide your response. So, and this is also a bit of thought provoking and in your face kind of a question. So, as leaders, what do you expect us to do in our profession? Should we change our jobs every few years? Should we reskill our skill sets? And if this is not enough, if AI would do our jobs, as is what you are hinting, what exactly do you want to do you want us to do in life? And secondly, how does this future of work looks like in 2025? 4 years is a big period, but at the end of the day, we also need to prepare now for this future of work. So it's actually a very thought-provoking. I know there are different threads to this question, but I can relate. I can relate because each one of us, irrespective of our profession, experience, or pedigree, is facing this what I call thinking kind of a, let's say, mode of saying where exactly am I and what exactly I will be. So just opening up to whosoever 2 or 3 of you can actually put this response to.
Let me go first, Sabir. I think reskilling is very much required in the probably one of the leading industry. So you cannot just learn something and sit back and relax your life. I think every month, every week, we learn something new in AI. So that's the name of the game. The things which I see is changing is it's not just the data science what we require in this industry. The way we are moving, we require all type of skill set. So either it is a product manager, either it is your product team consists of UI UX developer or data management guys, system management engineers, big data engineers, or deployment people, ML engineers. So it's like whole set of skill set we require to make actually AI models to build, deploy, use, and actionable. So it's not about just probably a niche group which will survive in this industry, but a lot of different skill set will require us to make AI really work and AI really reach to all the different problems which we want to solve.
Awesome. So,
I'll
Shashwat,
just
I want your views on this question. Sorry, Sarah, I'll come to you because there's something which I want you to add, and I'm trying to make this thread a bit more complex. 3 years, 4 years from now, would you be fine discussing the bell curve along with your folks and the bots together?
Actually, with bots, we won't even have to. They will just have their own.
See, Shashwat has gone on mute now. So, Shashwat, please unmute. Nitin, go ahead, please. And this is.
I was saying we'll still probably be doing it with our humans, because humans think they know it better, but they don't sometimes. In fact, bots probably will come and be very, very clear about where they stand on the bell curve. They'll be more fair in their own assessment, is I think what I feel. But I think going back to what we were saying, I feel we have to, and I can say from my personal experiences, what Shivani said, anybody feels that they know it and what they've studied is enough is by far mistaken. So even if you're in college, you're working 5 years, 10 years, doesn't matter. I think things have changed. Things are changing so fast and so rapidly that if you ever feel that you know it all or you know what you're doing, you're going to remain static and stagnant, and you'll be in for a rude shock. I personally have gone through it, and I'm speaking that from my experience. The other is what is the multidisciplinary approach. If you think you know a certain aspect of the whole analytics AI space well, go very, very deep, understand that very, very well from the concepts, from the intuition, and also go horizontal across. So if you think you're a data scientist, learn more about data. If you think you are a data expert, learn more about models. If you think you know both of them, learn about productization, learn about platformization, learn about scaling. So I think all those are the things which really will only help us to remain a little bit more relevant for a little longer. I just don't know for how long.
Okay. Yeah, so that gave me enough time to think on the answer, Samir, and thank you, Nitin. So the way I look at it, Samir, I'm an old, I would say I believe in old beliefs. Whatever was true 50 years before is also true now. My 2 cents to anybody asking that question will be, do what you love the most to do.
Yeah.
That's it. And become, make it your core competence. Whatever you are good in your core, please continue to do that, whether that is painting or it is to do with computer vision, whatever that is, please do that. Anyway, in tomorrow's world, bell curve will not be there, Samir, right? So it is already out for last 5 years. So
I just wanted to know actually if Philips is using that. Glad you answered that actually. So.
No, we don't use bell curve. Okay. And what we use now and we will use in another 5 years will be what you bring to the table from an outcome perspective, right? If the painting is really well, MF Hussains of the world will continue to have that premium, and explainability will continue to be there, and caregivers will continue to provide care, and they will be helped by all the tools that we are giving them via technology. So the caregiver or the doctor will continue to be there. He will be very happy to get all the technology support so that they don't have to do the CT scan.
Splendid.
No, I'll just add one thing.
Go ahead, Sarah, please.
I think Nitin covered the T element, right? One is depth, the other one is horizontal. I just want to add, it's also domain that matters. While you shift, make sure you're not shifting from one domain to another, because that's not going to take anybody anywhere, right?
I disagree. I've shifted domains, Sarah. I disagree.
You're an exception, Nitin.
We have Shivani. We have so many people who have shifted domains.
Shashwat also, he was in financial services.
Exactly.
Okay. So in the interest of the time, sorry, Sarah, I have to move to this segment, which is important. But I'll start with you, Sarah. Please, everyone go on mute. There is a bit of echo. This is interesting, and I'm sorry to kind of chime in because we have to be conscious of the time, 10 minutes to go. Now, one of the facets I haven't touched upon, and this is something which is germane to our entire theme, is let's go a bit strategic, let's go a bit elevated in terms of this enterprise decision making, where senior leadership, boards come in, and then we are talking about a certain insight, intelligence, and recommendations coming in today. Can everyone go on mute? I think we still have some echo issues. Okay. So what is happening today is that I think the decision-making processes amongst the leader is more skewed towards what we call historical, what's also in terms of the past gut intuition. Now, I'm not just trying to kind of, let's say, pick up an industry. It's more of a kind of a generic observation. But there are those organizations, Sundar and Shashwat mentioned about this platform, Shivani talked about kind of a new age organizations, which are straight away coming in, challenging the conventional wisdom of how decisions are taken. And that decision taking is not by anything else but algorithms. I mean, this whole aspect of AI strategy getting defined within the organization is now getting much, much more imminent and prominent. Now, so from your view lens, how do you see this decision making more strategically on the aspects of changing the course of the organization, pivoting, or making kind of a, let's say, a new mode? How does it's coming along with the advent of AI? Again, go rapid, go kind of give some swift kind of a, let's say, responses. Anecdotes would really help.
So, I would take two examples here, Samir. One is if we see Netflix, which we are used to everyday basis now, right? If we see what gets recommended there, it's both combination of historical but also predictive. So I would say it's mostly combination of business analytics plus AI combined together, right? It just doesn't take what you watch, but how much you surf, what kind of trailers are you watching. So there's a lot more that is going as input. And that is why the success rate of customer retention with Netflix is 91% compared to anybody else who are providing such recommendation. Right? And if we take today where we are ordering online, Amazon, there are recommendations that come in, but you also know it could be better, right? So it's evolution in each industry that we are talking about. I mean, I'm talking about Prime Video as well here. Coming into my own domain of banking, if we are looking at why we are in the business, it's because at the end of the day, it's the revenue, right? For that, we need to have the right customer acquisition, retention, and customer experience. And if customer life cycle is what we are looking at, I think to some point of what we discussed of how do we do the channel mapping to credit limit to everything, it's done in a certain way. Today, when we look at how the decisions are made at the enterprise level, that norm is changing, right? That norm is changing where we are saying it's not just in isolation, but we have to look at the entire journey of customer life cycle from customer acquisition to smart servicing, where we are enabling AI agent to review, to talent, for the talent as well as the training of customers, our front end, and our employees. So the whole proposition of AI at the board level and how we think of the strategy for AI is completely changing, and the enterprise rollouts of these are going to be much more meaningful in the coming days.
Sundar, your views? Thanks.
Data analytics is becoming a horizontal. That is how I would put it as. I'm not talking about data analytic companies. I'm talking about the traditional companies, a manufacturing company or a retail, an e-commerce company, etc. Data analytics is becoming a horizontal that cuts across multiple verticals. That is getting established today. So, I mean, instead of being a specialized group, it is permeating across the organization, and that is how I look at it.
Wonderful. I just want to take this interesting question and open up to Shashwat and Nitin for your views. The question is about if today we are talking about AI influencing decision making, will it compel companies, enterprises to come out with new product and services basis the recommendation of the algorithm?
Quick answer, yes, it's already happening. There are examples where, what AI is recommending on what customers' needs are, what their emerging, sometimes inherent, sometimes latent needs are. Big companies are becoming very fast to at least understand and get those signals so that they can, rather than basis, this is what I think the customers need, instead, this is what the customers are telling what they need, or they are displaying what they need through their actions, through their transactions. I think they're definitely using that to come up with products. Has it reached a point where AI is recommending and building those products? If you think about robo-advisory or things like where algorithmic decision making is being done, those are examples that come to my mind about what the companies are using AI to develop new products, product features, and services. But yeah, it's going to happen more and more.
Sure.
Yeah, I do see that happening as well, for sure. But I would still say that sentinels and all those things are still in future. And what Nitin just mentioned is behind all the AI, there will always some kind of a human being, and that is very important to continue to have. Of course, at the front end or the user level, you don't see it. But yeah, there will be a time when probably the proportion will reach a level where we have to get into the ethical discussions, but the discussion time is not now yet, is what I feel.
Great. One of the possible, I would say, and I'm trying to have two questions combined to kind of create one, and possibly this is in the turf of Shivani and Sundar. 5G plus IoT plus AI. What's the art of possible? 5G plus IoT plus AI. What's the art of possible?
There are two
I
streams.
think,
Sorry,
Good.
go ahead. Go ahead, Shivan, please.
I think it's the outcomes are unlimited, Samir. I think we have seen that with the help of 5G, doctors are able to do remote surgeries. Their so-called work from home has already started, and I think that's a lighter note. But the possibilities are unlimited because that's the era, or that's the space where all the devices, all the you can say units can be connected through 5G and IoT, and we will make a better decision. So it's not the AI will be limited to bigger organizations or the established verticals, but even the agriculture kind of verticals will get very big impacted, very big, you can say positive impact from AI, because that is the area, at least in India, we haven't seen anything happening with the help of AI or IoT or even with 5G.
Great. Sundar?
There are two streams here, Samir. The first one is the core 5G itself, the network architecture. How is 5G built? How is a software-defined network is run? When I say network, I'm talking about the telecom network here. So this is a big area, a huge area, and it is developing very, very fast. And there is so much of AI, specifically deep learning and advanced data analytics that is happening here. Because the way 5G will work, I'm talking about the core 5G, the telecom 5G, is going to be governed a lot by by AI, right? That is number one. The second one is the applications of 5G. How is 5G going to change the way I am living? That is going to have an impact on almost everything, and you'll be amazed at how things will change once 5G becomes a reality. When it becomes practically available, deployed in the country, in the world, many things will change. The first one, I mean, I work for NVIDIA. This is something which is dear to all of us, is gaming. 5G based gaming is going to change the way gaming has been working so far. Second one is video analytics, intelligent video analytics. Then it's going to have a big change thanks to 5G. The third one is the autonomous machines, specifically robo taxis and autonomous vehicles and things like that. Because the vehicle to vehicle communication, the vehicle to environment communication, everything is going to be managed by 5G. It's going to be at the flick of a second that things are going to happen, and hence the way these things will interact with one another will also change quite a bit. Last but not the least, healthcare point of view. Okay, through 5G, a real, very realistic, almost real-time remote collaboration, even to the range of performing remote surgeries, are going to happen. All these things are not science fiction that I'm talking about. These things will happen thanks to the advent of 5G. So 5G, telecom 5G, the core 5G, and the applications of 5G. That is that is what I would say. And reserve the best for the last is what we call as metaverse, a sort of an AR VR driven platform where you start interacting with your colleagues. You start collaborating with your colleagues. You start playing with your peers. You start interacting with multiple people in a virtual world, but you don't realize it at all, because the advent of 5G is going to make you feel as if you are existent in that world. That is what is called as metaverse, and a lot of work is happening, and NVIDIA calls it as omniverse. So that is a fascinating thing that we are able to witness.
Wonderful. Sundar, you've done a high decibel promotion of Facebook today. I mean,
Yeah, better.
Mark Zuckerberg must be very happy on this. We actually have reached time, but I am taking liberty of 30 seconds from each one of you. And this is something I want to make it interesting. 30-second, please. And better, I would say, respond in just one word. If you all need to take one enterprise decisions, and no name calling around bosses, if you got to take one enterprise decision making with AI, yourself, as in your respective work sphere, what is that would be? One decision making in your respective enterprise or work arena through AI, what exactly that would be? One word or one sentence should be good enough, please.
Oh, that's a difficult one. Enterprises make so many decisions, but I would say setting the strategy, running the simulations to figure out which strategy we may work well. I think I would, if I had the option, I would let that be a more simulation-driven, game theory embedded. How I would operate, how my competition would operate, how would this thing, and then choose out and work on a strategy.
Wonderful.
I would say digital twin. That's the name of the game. Of each and every entity which exists in business. In our world, it is telecom like towers, cells, etc. So digital twin for each and every entity.
Thank you, Shivani. Sara?
I would say enterprise strategy based on analytics decisioning.
Thank you. Shashwat?
Prioritization of my own work.
Awesome. Sundar?
Well, I mean, a model which accurately predicts how my clients and my partners will behave in a week from now, in a month from now. I find it very, very difficult to do that. That is number one. And possibly predict how the NVIDIA stock is going to move first in the future.
Wonderful. The bosses are pleased today, Sundar.
Politically removed the boss, right? Only customer. He politically removed the name of boss.
Well, actually, thank you so much. I think at the one part of doing these sessions on Friday, that to the fag end of the afternoon or the cusp of evening is the banters and knowing each other always help. But let me tell you, in fact, and I was listening through rapt attention to some of the perspective what each one of you shared. And while Disco hogged the framework, hogged the limelight, but I think each one of you really, I would say, pushed and really kind of put every one of us in a very ruminating mode and cogitation mode about that there is an art of possible today. What we are talking about in terms of human and enterprise decision making with AI, the possibilities are limitless. But what's more important is for us to really think beyond the horizon now, because each one of you elaborated very clearly that challenging the status quo is a norm. Disruption is not a taboo. And what is going to happen will also cause a disruption in our work sphere, in our kind of daily lives. And we got to be equipping ourselves with the best of insights and intelligence, and no better than AI to kind of be the Trojan horse. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate. It was a wonderful kind of a conversation. Really learned a lot. Thank you so much for your time, and all the audience, thank you so much for your time as well. Stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Totally enjoyed.
Thanks.
Thank you.